Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. A symbol of cunning, charm, and national pride. But what if behind her brilliance lay not a wise ruler, but a heart as cold and ruthless as the executioner's axe? England, under Elizabeth, is remembered as a land of flourishing arts, cautious diplomacy, and a monarch who balanced power with prudence. Yet history often hinges on small shifts, and imagining a queen driven solely by ambition and cruelty opens a dark window into what might have been. The real Elizabeth ruled with strategy, charisma, and restraint, earning the loyalty of her people and the respect of her court. In this alternate reality, she becomes a tyrant, obsessed with power, feared by allies and subjects alike. England of the late 16th century, a nation already entangled in religious tension and political intrigue, would face unprecedented upheaval. Culture, politics, and international alliances hang by a thread. Let's step back to the moment that could have altered her destiny forever and see how a different Elizabeth might have reshaped history. Every legend has a moment of fracture. For Elizabeth, it might have been the shadow of her mother's execution or the relentless fear of betrayal at court. Born in 1533, Elizabeth Tudor's early years were marked by trauma and uncertainty. The daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, she entered the world as a princess, yet her mother's fall from favor and eventual execution cast a long, chilling shadow over her childhood. At just 2.5 years old, Elizabeth witnessed the brutal severing of her mother's life and title, an event that left an indelible mark on her psyche. Her survival in the dangerous, ever-shifting Tudor court demanded vigilance, adaptability, and a keen awareness of human ambition. Historical accounts suggest Elizabeth learned patience and strategic thinking as shields against the perils of courtly intrigue. In this alternate reality, however, the seeds of trauma sprout in a darker direction. Instead of cultivating cautious diplomacy, Elizabeth internalizes her fears as a weapon. Every whispered rumor, every sudden favor or slight becomes evidence of betrayal. The young princess develops a rigid worldview. Loyalty must be enforced, weakness punished, and fear wielded as a tool to command obedience. Where the historical Elizabeth tempered her ambition with pragmatism, this version channels her intelligence into ruthless calculation. Her mind, sharp as ever, is now sharpened for dominance rather than survival. Emotional triggers become the engine of her tyranny. Memories of her mother's execution instill a compulsive obsession with controlling those around her. Nobles are no longer allies to be courted but threats to be subdued. Dissent, however minor, is met with swift and often brutal retaliation. Her court becomes an environment of tension and paranoia, where loyalty is demanded, not earned. Fear becomes both a shield and a weapon. She trusts no one fully, yet expects total obedience from all. The contrast between historical and tyrannical Elizabeth is stark. The real queen employed patience, strategic alliances, and careful diplomacy, earning her enduring legacy as a shrewd and revered monarch. The alternate Elizabeth, however, allows her psychological scars to dictate policy. Political maneuvering is replaced by impulsive executions, harsh punishments, and authoritarian decrees. Her brilliance remains undeniable, but it is now a brilliance darkened by cruelty, obsession, and paranoia. This section lays the foundation for her transformation, explaining why Elizabeth might veer from measured wisdom to unchecked tyranny. It sets up her motivations for drastic reforms, authoritarian measures, and an unrelenting quest for power. England, poised on the threshold of her reign, faces a monarch whose heart is hardened by fear and ambition. With a heart hardened by fear and ambition, Elizabeth ascends the throne, and England braces for a reign unlike any it has known. The Virgin Queen takes her crown, but this time, she takes it with an iron grip. January 1559 marks Elizabeth's ascent to the throne, but in this alternate history, the atmosphere is thick with tension. The grand cathedral echoes with the murmurs of courtiers, yet behind the gilded arches and ceremonial splendor lies a court holding its collective breath. Elizabeth's coronation is not merely a celebration, it is a declaration of intent. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scan the crowd. Every noble, every advisor, every potential rival becomes a chess piece in her ruthless game of power. Within days, her first acts of consolidation set the tone for a reign unlike any England has known. Ambitious nobles are summoned under the guise of council, only to find themselves accused of treachery. Suspected traitors are executed swiftly, their heads serving as grim reminders of the cost of disloyalty. Informants and spies infiltrate every layer of court life. Whispers of dissent are reported instantly, and fear becomes the currency of obedience. The atmosphere is tense, suspenseful, and oppressive, leaving courtiers walking on metaphorical, and sometimes literal, eggshells. Loyalty is demanded, not earned. Historical Elizabeth, by contrast, navigated her early reign with careful diplomacy. She cultivated allies, rewarded loyalty, and balanced purges with strategic pardons. Her approach allowed her to win the affection of her court while maintaining authority. Tyrant Elizabeth, however, inverts this dynamic. Compromise is a weakness. Fear is a tool. Every decision is guided by the ruthless calculus of power, not the subtleties of alliance. The court becomes a theater of suspicion, where even casual remarks are scrutinized for signs of betrayal. This immediate consolidation establishes the overarching tone of her reign, centralized, absolute, and terrifying. Themes of fear, control, and political suppression recur constantly. Her advisors learn quickly that their survival depends on unquestioning obedience, and whispers of rebellion are extinguished before they can take root. Elizabeth's reign begins not with ceremony or celebration but with a show of strength so absolute that it redefines the very nature of monarchy in England. England watches as its queen, once celebrated for charm and prudence, transforms into an embodiment of ruthlessness. The crown, now heavy with both authority and terror, signals that mercy will be rare and dissent fatal. Her grip tightens daily, leaving no room for compromise. Power secured at home is only the beginning. Elizabeth's eyes turn to the challenges of religion and foreign diplomacy. The Kingdom of England, torn by faith for decades, faces a queen unwilling to tolerate dissent. Her religion is law, and her law is absolute. Elizabeth inherits a nation fractured along confessional lines, a Protestant majority still wary of Catholic plots, and a Catholic minority yearning for the old faith. In this alternate history, there is no delicate Elizabethan settlement, no cautious compromise. Tyrant Elizabeth enforces Protestantism with relentless fervor, leaving no space for neutrality or dissent. Catholic priests are hunted, monasteries dissolved, and public executions of recusants send shockwaves of terror through towns and villages. The Queen's message is unmistakable: obedience to the state religion is not optional, it is survival. Uprisings are crushed with brutal efficiency. Rebellions, no matter how small, are met with merciless punishment, making examples of leaders in public squares. The Church of England is purged of any remnants of compromise. Rituals, liturgy, and even the tone of sermons are dictated with unyielding precision. There is no middle path, no Anglican moderation to balance the demands of faith with political expediency. Clergy, scholars, and nobility alike learn that deviation from prescribed doctrine is tantamount to treason. This rigid enforcement extends beyond religion into culture and intellectual life. Literature, theater, and science are subjected to strict moral codes. Plays must glorify Protestant values, scientific inquiry must align with the Queen's moral and religious dictates, and writers risk execution or exile if their work challenges her authority or the approved theology. The creative vibrancy historically associated with Elizabethan England is stifled, replaced by an atmosphere of fear and suppression. The contrast with historical Elizabeth is stark. The real Queen, while Protestant, pursued religious compromise, allowing some Catholic practices to persist and fostering a relatively tolerant Anglican settlement. Her moderation prevented widespread unrest and allowed cultural and intellectual life to flourish. Tyrant Elizabeth, by contrast, rules through absolutist enforcement, employing violence as both a tool and a deterrent. Fear dominates everyday life, and the nation's soul bends to the will of a single, unyielding ruler. By reshaping England's religious and cultural identity through terror, Elizabeth leaves no space for dissent or independent thought. Her reign transforms the very fabric of society. Obedience is paramount, intellectual curiosity is constrained, and fear becomes the currency of both faith and daily life. Communities once defined by rich religious diversity now live under a regime where deviation is punished and conformity enforced with ruthless efficiency. But domestic terror is only half the story. Abroad, Elizabeth's tyranny sparks war and upheaval, drawing England into a series of conflicts that will test her absolute authority and reshape Europe itself. Where England once charmed allies, now it commands through intimidation and martial might. Elizabeth's personality shift from shrewd diplomat to ruthless tyrant reverberates beyond her borders, transforming England's approach to foreign policy. Historically, she carefully navigated European politics, balancing the threats of Spain, France, and the papacy while avoiding overextension. In this alternate timeline, however, Elizabeth views diplomacy as weakness and embraces a strategy of direct intimidation and military aggression. Alliances are discarded if they do not serve her immediate goals. Treaties are honored only when expedient, and threats are met with decisive, often devastating action. Her ambitions extend across the seas. England aggressively expands its colonial reach, establishing fortified outposts in the Americas and the Caribbean. The English Armada, an audacious military fleet, attacks Catholic Spain not merely to defend Protestant interests but to dominate and humiliate a rival empire. Overseas territories are secured by force, and England's navy becomes a dual instrument of expansion and oppression. Soldiers and sailors enforce Elizabeth's will both abroad and at home, ensuring that rebellion or dissent cannot flourish in any sphere under her influence. European powers soon recognize the New England as a militarized, authoritarian state. Spain, France, and the Netherlands tread carefully, wary of provoking a monarch who rules through fear and lethal precision. Unlike the historical Elizabeth, whose measured response to the Spanish Armada bolstered her prestige without unnecessary loss, this Elizabeth prioritizes aggressive victories over calculated diplomacy. Each conquest sends a message: England is not to be questioned, and its queen brooks no challenge anywhere. This militarization carries profound consequences. England's economy is reshaped to support a permanent standing army and navy, with resources diverted from trade and domestic investment. The nobility, once influential in matters of war and diplomacy, are now instruments of the crown, their power curtailed by fear and loyalty enforced through threats or execution. European balance of power shifts as other nations struggle to counter Elizabeth's expansionist, militaristic policies. England becomes both respected and feared, a dark mirror of the nation that once thrived under cautious diplomacy. Through these actions, Elizabeth's personal transformation manifests on a global scale. Her aggressive, expansionist policies redefine the international order. Colonies are conquered, enemies humiliated, and England's reputation evolves from clever negotiator to relentless, authoritarian power. Every naval victory and territorial acquisition reinforces her image as a queen who rules not through persuasion, but through unflinching force. With her enemies crushed and her empire expanding, Elizabeth turns her tyranny inward, reshaping England's society forever. Fear becomes the currency of daily life, and loyalty is bought only through obedience. Under Tyrant Elizabeth, England's streets, courts, and villages are transformed into a tightly controlled web of surveillance. Secret police operate in every town, reporting whispers of dissent to the crown. Nobles, once powerful arbiters of regional authority, are monitored relentlessly. Any deviation from loyalty is met with exile, imprisonment, or execution. The once vibrant court becomes a theater of tension, where courtiers constantly measure their words and gestures against the ever-watchful gaze of spies and informants. Education, culture, and intellectual life are reshaped to serve the Queen's will. Schools teach only approved doctrine. Universities enforce strict adherence to religious and political orthodoxy. Literature, theater, and art are censored, with creativity constrained by moral and ideological codes dictated from the throne. Any work deemed subversive or critical of the crown disappears, silencing voices that might inspire independent thought. Even scientific inquiry is subject to scrutiny, ensuring that innovation aligns with Elizabeth's strict vision for the nation. Economic policies reflect the same authoritarian mindset. Royal coffers swell as taxes and levies are directed primarily to the crown, funding the surveillance state, standing army, and naval expansion. Common prosperity is secondary. Merchants, artisans, and farmers are constrained by regulations designed to benefit the monarchy. Wealth is concentrated at the top, and the social hierarchy is maintained through fear rather than merit or opportunity. This contrasts sharply with historical Elizabeth, whose reign is celebrated as a golden age. The real queen nurtured arts, literature, theater, and exploration, supporting social mobility and intellectual growth. England flourished under her patronage, and a relatively tolerant atmosphere allowed for cultural vibrancy and innovation. Tyrant Elizabeth, by contrast, crushes these opportunities, replacing them with a society defined by obedience, hierarchy, and the omnipresence of fear. The psychological impact on ordinary citizens is profound. Daily life is dominated by the constant threat of punishment. Families teach children to speak cautiously, neighbors avoid private conversations, and social interactions are carefully choreographed to avoid suspicion. Even the elite live under unrelenting pressure, with personal alliances weighed against potential risks. Innovation is stifled, risk-taking punished, and the rich tapestry of English culture frays under the weight of authoritarian control. As decades pass, even her family and advisors live in constant fear. Loyalty is never guaranteed, and the cost of tyranny becomes intensely personal. England itself becomes a reflection of its queen, rigid, controlled, and haunted by the ever-present shadow of her unyielding will. No throne is secure forever, and even a tyrant must face the consequences of her reign. Elizabeth's relentless pursuit of power and control extends to her interactions with family, courtiers, and potential heirs. Unlike the historical queen, who remained unmarried and carefully balanced court factions, Tyrant Elizabeth sees marriage and children as tools to cement her authority. If she chooses to marry, her union is a calculated political maneuver designed to produce heirs whose loyalty is to her alone, rather than to broader factions of nobility or foreign powers. These heirs, groomed under strict supervision, inherit not only her crown but her ruthless mindset, perpetuating a culture of fear and absolutism. Yet ruthlessness comes at a cost. By alienating allies and suppressing dissent so mercilessly, Elizabeth creates an environment ripe for rebellion. Noble families, once partners in governance, chafe under constant surveillance and intimidation. Clergy members, pressured into enforcing her strict religious policies, quietly plot insurrection. Foreign powers, observing England's instability and harsh rule, see opportunities to back factions seeking to destabilize her reign. Even the closest advisors must weigh their loyalty against survival, fostering paranoia within the inner circle. Possible rebellion scenarios are frequent and dangerous. A Catholic noble faction might attempt an uprising, seeking to restore traditional religious authority. Disgruntled Protestant factions could plot coups against policies perceived as excessively oppressive. Foreign-backed insurrections might exploit internal strife, providing armies and funds to ambitious claimants. Unlike historical Elizabeth, whose political acumen and restraint ensured stability despite being childless, Tyrant Elizabeth's heavy-handed rule leaves her dynasty and kingdom vulnerable. The personal consequences of her reign are profound. Isolation becomes inevitable as fear corrodes genuine relationships. Allies are too terrified to offer honest counsel, and even family members are treated as potential threats. Paranoia defines her daily life, with every whisper, glance, and disagreement interpreted as a potential betrayal. Moral corruption seeps into her character, as acts of cruelty once justified by ambition become habits, eroding the humanity beneath the crown. In contrast, historical Elizabeth maintained a delicate equilibrium. She avoided marriage and heirs, but her political wisdom, charisma, and judicious use of power produced a stable legacy that allowed England to flourish. Tyrant Elizabeth, for all her initial success, finds her reign constantly threatened by the very fear and control she imposed. Her throne is never secure, her relationships are transactional, and the human cost of absolute power becomes painfully evident. As the years of terror accumulate, England itself is unrecognizable, a kingdom shaped entirely by fear, suspicion, and the uncompromising will of a queen whose brilliance is inseparable from her cruelty. The Golden Age never comes. The Virgin Queen is remembered not for triumph, but for terror. In this alternate England, the vibrancy and optimism of the Elizabethan era are replaced by a society dominated by fear. Shakespeare, Marlowe, and other cultural icons struggle under strict censorship, their works altered or suppressed to conform to the Queen's rigid moral and religious codes. Literature, theater, and science are no longer engines of innovation and cultural pride. They become instruments of propaganda, reinforcing obedience and reinforcing the omnipresence of the crown. The flourishing of arts, exploration, and intellectual life that defined historical England is replaced by stagnation, conformity, and dread. England's Protestant identity is imposed through brutality, leaving a fractured society where fear dictates both faith and daily life. Intellectual growth is stifled, and religious coercion replaces the nuanced settlement that historically allowed for relative tolerance. Abroad, England's relationships are shaped by intimidation rather than respect. Allies comply grudgingly, enemies plot in secret, and the nation is feared rather than admired. England's expansionist ambitions may yield territories, but they come at the cost of international goodwill and long-term stability. Historical Elizabeth, by contrast, balances diplomacy, exploration, religious compromise, and cultural patronage. Her reign fosters a foundation for modern England, inspiring admiration, respect, and intellectual achievement. Tyrant Elizabeth leaves a far darker legacy, her brilliance overshadowed by cruelty, her policies leaving long-term societal stagnation and an enduring climate of suspicion. The intellectual, cultural, and political vibrancy of her country is sacrificed to consolidate her absolute power. This alternate timeline illustrates the immense consequences a single personality shift can create. One queen's choice to rule through fear rather than prudence reverberates across society, religion, culture, and international relations, leaving a nation unrecognizable to future generations. History is a story of choices, and sometimes one queen's ruthlessness can rewrite an entire nation. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, remains a symbol of cunning and intelligence, but what if she had chosen terror over diplomacy? In this alternate timeline, England is reshaped by a ruler whose brilliance is inseparable from cruelty. Her reign enforces obedience through fear, suppresses culture and innovation, and imposes a rigid religious orthodoxy. The arts are censored, intellectual life constrained, and society dominated by surveillance and mistrust. Abroad, England's reputation shifts from respected power to feared militarized state, alliances forged through intimidation rather than mutual benefit. The contrast with the historical Elizabeth is stark. One queen inspires loyalty, fosters culture, and navigates diplomacy with skill. The other leaves a legacy of paranoia, oppression, and societal stagnation. How thin is the line between a brilliant ruler and a tyrant? Elizabeth's alternate reign reminds us that the fate of nations can pivot on the choices of a single individual. If this journey into an alternate Tudor past fascinated you, like and subscribe to explore more what-if history scenarios.